Good morning, y'all. It is January 20th, Monday, 2026. It is a foggy day out here. Let me tell you what. Look at that. It is super duper foggy. Not very cold though. I'm a little cold because the pants I'm wearing are pretty thin. I'm like wearing pretty thin sweatpants. So yeah, how's everybody doing? Happy Monday to all. I hope everybody is enjoying time with their family today if you have this holiday off. I do. I have it off, as I've stated. So does my wife, and the daycares are closed today, so the kids are home. We were, playing, having a good time, and they were kind of just eating some food, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna go for a quick walk. And while I'm out, I wanted to shoot today's video. So I was kind of thinking, I've been thinking about what I want to do with the channel, at least like a series of videos I want to do right now. I could talk about my day, and I have, but then when I hit the 5 or 6 minute mark, I tend to ramble, and I kind of lose my thought process. So I don't want to do that. I think what I'm going to start doing is for the next week or so, let's do some story time. Let's do a series of videos about my life and about who I am. So the only place to begin is at the beginning. So I was born in August of 1996. I am currently 29. I will be 29 for 7 more months until August, and I'll be 30. I'll be out of my 20s. That's crazy. I'm old. I'm old now. It's really insane thinking about it. Like growing up, watching YouTube, and always want to be a YouTuber since I was at whatever age. I was 13, 14. I think 13, 14, yeah. 16, 17 years later, here I am, right? So I was born in August 1996. I grew up in a fairly small town in California. And in that small town, I like to call my town a one high school town. And essentially that's what it is, right? My whole town, there's like 5 schools, or the town I grew up in. There's the elementary school, which is kindergarten through 3rd grade. Across town, there is another elementary school. That elementary school is 4th and 5th grade only. Fun fact about that school is my brother was in the first 4th grade class that went there. Before they built that school, the main elementary school was kindergarten through 5th grade. And so it's not a huge school. It's a lot of kids that cram in one place. So they built this school, which is us 4th and 5th graders. And I don't know how it is now, but at the time, it was just modular classrooms. Like it wasn't even like foundation buildings. Like they didn't have like a building. They didn't have a foundation, except the office and the library. That was it. Everything else was trailers, right? The school didn't even have a cafeteria. They shared a cafeteria with the middle school, which is right next door, which was 6th through 8th. That middle school, like everything was permanent. That school's been there for a long time. So middle school is 6th through 8. Across town, back by the elementary school, like 2 blocks from the elementary school, was your high school. That's it. There was a continuation school, for folks that got kicked out of regular school. And there was actually a private school in town too. There was a Christian school, which I lived next to. My backyard butted up against the school grounds. And so I remember growing up, sometimes we would have like people like from the school look over our fence, and then like later on in my life, when I was like 8th grade or a freshman, like I had a friend who her father was like the pastor of that school, and so he lived on the grounds. So we'd go over there and hang out like on the grounds of that private school. They had a jungle gym, and we'd hang out and do stuff. So that's the town I grew up in, and I lived in that town until I was 15, I should say. And then we moved to, well, like I moved to Modesto with my dad. So the town I grew up in, I don't know if I said the name of it, but it's Houston. I grew up in Houston, California, not to be confused with Houston, Texas. My whole life, that's what I got. Houston? No, Houston. Houston, spelt Hughson, like hug son. So that's why I grew up, and oh man, thought this would be easier to like tell you everything. So anyways, so we lived there. I lived by the Christian school on the other side of town, still in town. When I hit 4th grade, I just remember like me and my brother would always walk to school once we hit 4th grade, or once he hit 5th grade, or whatever grade he was in, because I'm 2 years younger than him. We just walked. We walked to school, or rode our bikes or skateboards or whatever. And it was a long walk. I mean, it's a long distance from where we lived. I remember, always thinking, man, like, it takes me like 20 minutes to walk to school sometimes. It was far. Compared to like some other kids that live closer. Our house is pretty, I don't say it was old. It was an older house. A cool thing about my house growing up, it had speakers built into it. And like in the living room, there was this little like built-in tape deck. And there was like a radio that you could play music on throughout the whole house. So like, I just remember like growing up when I got a little older thinking about, oh man, like I wonder if there was kind of like some Scarface-esque parties going on in this house, because it just seemed like a party house, when I got a little older and I started thinking that way. So I grew up in Houston. Kindergarten through, I don't know, 7th grade was fine. When I hit 8th grade, that's when my education started to lack. Like I started to stop caring about school. I'm sure it started in 6th grade. Like once you get to 6th grade, you're doing, bear with me here, there's a bunch of trucks driving next to me. As you can hear, it's probably really loud, and you'll be able to see it too. Thank you for bearing with me. So like when I got to 6th grade, right, that's when you no longer have like one classroom. You have periods, and you go from classroom to classroom, and you have different teachers. And I think that's when I really started to stop doing schoolwork and started to mess around and goof off. And then comes 8th grade, right? And when 8th grade hit, I got held back. And it wasn't like a teacher's decision. It was my parents' decision, because California, you have like the no kid gets off behind. So I have a funny story to tell you about this as I'm done walking past this other truck that's right here. So bear with me again. It's pretty loud. One thing about this park, I should say, is I run into people at this park sometimes, but I definitely run into more trucks. A lot of truckers will park around here, for overnight stays or whatever. So story. So I get called in the office. I walk into the principal's office. Mr. Taylor was the principal, and my parents are in there. They're in the office. I sit down, I look at the whiteboard. Bunch of names on the whiteboard. A lot of them are written black. Some are written in yellow. But there's one written in red. That was my name. when I saw that, I went, ooh, why is my name in red? Oh, this isn't good. And, you know, like we were looking over my schoolwork, and my mom and dad were drilling me, you know, like, real quick, Mr. Taylor, the principal, this dude was the principal, like, at every school at one point in Houston. Like, when I was little, when I was in elementary school, he was the principal, right? So he knew us well. He knew my family well, me well. So we're sitting there, and Mr. Taylor's being nice. It's not his choice. He talked to my parents. My parents are the ones drilling me. They want to hold me back. They're looking at some of my schoolwork, and they're looking at, like my English, or sorry, my history class. And it's like, how was Abraham Lincoln assassinated? Was a question. Me being, a little smart aleck, I wrote, he was shot. Like, I knew about John Wilkes Booth because I'm a big history guy. So, so I wrote like a smart aleck answer. He was shot. My dad's like, what is this? The answer. You're not putting an effort in your work. And so I get held back. And when I get held back, all my friends go to high school. I stay in middle school. I had some friends in the grade below me, but most of my friends were in my grade. And to be honest with you, my friends in my grade, like, they kind of stopped becoming, they weren't really my friends anymore. Like, I don't know, we all kind of went different paths. They probably looked at me as like the annoying kid, and I was, like, wasn't really overweight as a kid, but I had asthma, like, I still do, or whatever. But like, so they weren't really my friends anymore. And the thing about this town is, like, I went to school with all those guys in that grade in kindergarten. Like my friends, all my friends I had in middle school, I was in grade school with at one point. Like, gonna make up names here. Like Joe and I were probably in kindergarten together. We might have been in kindergarten, 3rd grade and 5th grade together. So like, we thought we would have like a friendship or whatever, but we didn't. Like, my friends, they started, doing nefarious deeds in 8th grade. And then I was going to join them later on in my life. But so they all left, and I didn't really have a whole lot of friends in my new class, my new 8th grade class. But eventually, like, I was able to make friends because the kids were younger than me, and they kind of looked up to me, and I made some really good friends. I had there was 5 of us, including myself, that were thick as thieves. And there was a couple other kids that, like, I wasn't really that close with, but some other, like, because there's 5 of us, right? Some of the other ones were closer to them than I was, like these extra kids, and we became, like, really close friends. We had a friend who lived out in the country, and he lived, like, out in the country, way out there. And so sometimes, we'd go out to his house. This is a high school story, but I remember being in high school, I used to sneak on the bus with him, like, and go to his house, and like the bus driver would yell at us. One time the bus driver said she wouldn't let me off, but I was scared. I was like, okay, like, so I had to stay on the bus all the way all the way to my friend's house. I had to do the whole bus ride back to the high school. And then we got off the bus, and she was like, I'm going to walk to the principal's office. I'm going to turn you in. I said, oh, okay. And I just ran, and I ran home, like at the weeb. So, yeah, so that pretty much my 8th grade, kindergarten through 8th grade. Again, like, the thing about my school that, like, kind of sucked was, if I was like the weirdo in kindergarten or in 3rd grade, that label followed you all the way to high school. So, I didn't really have a big dating life in school, not like some other kids, right? Or like you see, like, on TV, or maybe you've had friends that were, dating. Like, I didn't have any of that. There was girls that I liked, and my 2nd year in 8th grade, I remember doing the dumb note, you know, that I passed to a girl. Do you like me? Click this box, click that box. And she just laughed. You know, so like it doesn't hurt now. It's kind of funny, but like, geez Louise, I wanted to die, dude, when that happened. Like, the embarrassment was real. Luckily, that class was the last class of the day. So once it was over, I just bailed, went home. So here I am saying so again, running out of words, you know, to say. And there's a lot happened in that town and in my life. I don't really know if I want to get into now, because the video is already 16 minutes long. I completed a lot, by the way. I'm on my second one right now. So that's pretty much the story time for today. I'll pick it up tomorrow. You know, it was pretty brief, like, explanation of my school life until freshman year. I think what I'll do tomorrow is I'm going to talk about my life as a kid, you know. Maybe I'll just do that now, since I'm already out here. I'll do a 20-minute video. I'm a little nervous that, you know, like, if YouTube will let me post this for my phone. I'm sure they will. But anywho, you know, growing up, like, my mom was a nurse. My dad worked for, like, juvenile hall. So he worked with, like, a lot of younger, you know, he worked with kids that would go to jail. They would go to kid jail, right? Anywhere from, like, 8 years old to 17 years old. So he dealt with kids that, you know, had minor charges, the really big charges, you know. And sometimes, so, like, later in life, when me and my brother started to do nefarious deeds, you know, like, my dad would compare us to those kids. You know, you're no better than the kids I work with. And in reality, we were better. We were just, you know, doing illicit substances. There was a couple times where me and my buddies thought it was fun to go to our school after hours and climb on the buildings. And unfortunately, one time we did that. People saw us and they thought, it just so happened somebody broke into that school that same day. In fact, the day we were there, we saw them. We saw them do it. And so we got busted for that. And, like, we had to go to court and stuff, and, like, you know, had, like, a record. And so, like, that's when it kind of got bad. Like, oh, you're no better than the kids I work with, kind of deal. But, you know, we, there was nothing to do in that town, right? There's no, you know, everything was out of town and next door. I'm gonna let's stop right here because the trucks are moving again. You know, and so we fell into some bad crowds, right? And then me and my brother kind of were the bad crowds for a minute. And unfortunately, like, that stuff happens. But, like, the stuff we did as kids, you know, don't define who you are as an adult. You know, it definitely doesn't. I mean, I use that stuff as fuel for today, right? Being a father, trying to raise my kids, put them on a different path than I grew up on. And then, you know, even my work, like I work with a certain demographic of people, you know, that have experienced and lived certain lives, similar lives I lived when I was, you know, doing those deeds. So, it's back on track. You know, like, my parents had good working jobs. They had good paying jobs. We went on vacations all the time as kids. You know, I was grateful enough to go on cruises with my family for a little. You know, we went on cruises. We went to Disneyland. Go to, like, Universal Studios, and, you know, all sorts of fun stuff. You know, every other year or every 2 years. So we had on paper, we had a good family. You know, and then, like, the home life was a little rough, you know, with me and my brother. And then, like, I kind of mentioned earlier that me and my dad moved to Modesto when I was a sophomore. Just me and my dad, not the four of us, my mom, dad, and brother. So I'm sure I'll talk about that at a later date. You know, so there was trouble in paradise. So, you know, it was picture perfect, but the picture wasn't perfect, so to speak. So, we're hitting the 20-minute mark. That's it for today. I am getting colder. I'm gonna hurry up this lap and go home back to my family. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, do all that fun stuff. I appreciate you all. The vlog is over now. Bye-bye.